Now I was going to make the next job to strip off the paint off the boot lid here and get all this in etch primer, but I've decided I'll do the roof panel first, because I don't want to be putting all this in etch primer and then putting paint stripper on here and washing it onto areas that I've already etch primed, like the hood and that sort of thing. So I'll start with the roof panel. Now first thing I've got to do is just clean off all this seam seal that was here between the windscreen and the roof panel. There'll be a bit of this on the rear screen as well, so I've got to get all this cleaned off, because I'll do the roof and the pillars at the same time and do all of that as one job. So I've got the front edge pretty clear of seam sealer. That's fairly clean there. First thing I did when I started stripping down this car is I already removed the seam sealer inside this gutter channel in here. So now I'm just taking off the seam sealer off the back. Now this is awkward because it's in a fairly tight angle underneath here, so I'm just using the edge of a screwdriver to get that off. And there's a lot of it on this rear screen. Now this passenger side of the roof is actually worse than the driver's side. You can see all that pitting coming in from the corner of the roof there, and it gets worse as it gets back to this section here. So I am going to cut out this whole length across here, because this is actually fairly flat with a slight curve obviously coming through to here, and I'll stop at about this point, because from about here the roof gains a step, if you can sort of see that step on the roof there. So I'll stop to about here and then make a small section for this rear part. I've also found in the back of this the roof panel there's seam sealer that goes in between these two folds of skin, of roof paneling here. So if you are doing a 4-door pillarless, there's a seam sealer back there that needs to be replaced if you're stripping it all back. Okay, so what you've just seen there is a new tool I've just picked up from a paint shop, and this is basically a wheel brush. It goes onto a drill, fits nice and easily. It's made of some sort of, feels like a plastic material, but it's fantastic for stripping off paint. It does a real quick job, as you can see, and I've done a little patch there in just a matter of seconds. The paint strip I used wasn't strong enough to get all the paint off. I've got an electric DA sander that I can use as well, but this thing here is super quick. You've got to wear a breathing apparatus for it, because it does make a lot of dust. But as you can see, it gets right under there. It gets it off real nice. So I've got all the paint off the top of the roof, and from inside these gutters and all the railings around the back and the front, that's all clear of paint. I haven't done the underside. I'll do that at another stage. I'm really concentrating on the top, because I want to get this in etch primer as soon as possible. And I will do that before I cut this rust out. So once it's covered in etch primer, at least it's protected. I've done the pillars as well, gone down to about that sort of length all around, and the rest I'll do when I do the lower door jambs at some other stage. This is now ready for DA sanding, and after it's DA sanded and 80 grit, it'll be ready for etch primer. So that's it, the whole roof's been DA sanded with 80 grit. That's now ready for etch primer. Now, as I usually do, once it's back to bare metal, I wash it off with vinegar water, which I've just done. And I've just used the back of the, just a normal dishwashing pad, the scourer part, to clean it all up. And you can see it starts to turn gold. So I'll just let that sit for a bit and then clean that off. And then next is to put paint on there. So that's the roof done after 3-4 wet coats of etch primer. So tomorrow's task is going to be to cut some rust out. So I've cut out my metal strips that are going to go on these side parts of the roof here. And what I've decided to do is just stop short at the front. And what I'm going to make is a separate piece for this very front section here because of the curve in it. And it also has more of a curved profile than this part here. So that's going to be a separate piece, and I'll put the two together. So now I've just got to line up the rear of this piece here as to where this is actually going to stop, which is going to be pretty much before the step in the roof line here. So I'm cutting into just flat roof. So that'll be about from there. And now I can put my piece of paper in behind here and just trace the shape that I need for the front. Okay, so that's the little copy for the front patch that's going to be cut out there, and I can duplicate this for both sides because it'll be the same. Now I've got that front corner patch on, so I've got to get the shape of the roof. So just the way that I've been doing it, that I've found easier for this sort of thing, is to use the existing steel to get your shape for your new patch. So it's just a case of putting it on there. Obviously I've clamped that down, and I'm going to slowly work this clamp up the top edge here and across the bottom, and it will eventually get the exact shape of this roof here, because it's not really a great big curve I've got to put in there, it's only fairly slight. So that's it. It's taken 3 clamps, but that patch has got the exact form and shape of the roof line. So now I'll just do the same thing to the opposite side, same thing to these long patches across the length of the roof line here.
It's squashing it.
Certainly is. So that's it. That's now taking the exact shape of the roof line of this car. Okay, so I've cut the first corner piece, and the first problem I ran into is the wheel won't cut straight down here without cutting into the gutter, so I've come in on an angle. I'll have to adjust my patch panel to suit that a bit later on. But I just want to pry this open because I'm not sure how many layers of skin I'm going through here. So I'll see if I can take this first piece off. And there we go. So it looks like that's only just one layer of skin. So that's good news. So scaly as this was on the outside, it doesn't appear to have been that bad on the inside, but it's starting to come through around about this spot here. So it is a good thing that I'm cutting this out and replacing it. Otherwise this will develop into some major rusty areas down the track. I can also get in behind here and clean all these areas up and put some rust converter on the inside of here as well. So that's the first piece done. Now it's a matter of cutting out the rest and putting in the panels. So that's basically how it's going to go. There's that little corner, it's not tacked in yet, it's just sitting there. And then the big long side patch panel. I've etch primed both of these parts. This is done on both sides. I've etch primed this underneath. And then it's just a matter of cutting out the rest of the roof, and it should look something like it's sitting in there now, which is where you no longer see rust.